you told me one thing that really stood out, which was to take your number, find your number first. Like, what do you want to make out of this? And then reverse engineer it backwards. And that's something that was a light bulb moment for me because I've never done that before. Like looking at, okay, what do I want out of this? And then work backwards on how to make that happen. We are back after a holiday and getting back into the swing of things. And we're going to dive in and talk about some project planning for your business. Whether you're starting up or you've been in business for years, you probably have different things you worked on that are project based, like something that is a time sensitive, something you're building within your business. And that's something that I've been personally going through in my business. And so Tanner and I are going to break down some of those project-based tasks and including like looking at your numbers and how to bring your project to success. So what are your initial thoughts, Tanner?
I love, being able to just dive into something a little bit more specific, especially for the audience, to it being less kind of this big, grand, I don't know, generalized topic and getting a little bit more specific on like what does this look like in practice? And so yeah, I'm excited to kind of dig in. Have you asked a couple questions? I'll probably ask some questions in return, just kind of walk through how we navigate through some of these processes and planning for doing something, creating a project that's truly effective and profitable and achieves the desired outcome of what the project is intended to do.
Definitely. Well, I'm super excited to dive in and share a little bit about, about this and my experience as this is kind of my first time tracking my metrics in this project and being focused on the numbers and seeing them in front of me. So, yeah, I guess we'll kind of dive in my project here is an event I'm planning, end of year event. And this event has the opportunity to help us with growth in the company and as well as it just gives me an idea of what I want to do and take it into 2025. And so yeah, I guess my first question is like where do we start? Say we have this project idea, we've talked with our team about it, we want to initiate it, we want to go forward with it, we want it to be beneficial to the company and also serve a really great purpose and reflect our business well. So how do we kind of get the ball rolling with starting a project like that?
Well, I'm always going to take it back to measure and then test, and getting into like what specifically are the outcomes that we're looking to achieve with the specific project, like what profit, what money, what are all the numbers that we need to kind of to measure and track within the business. So like when you and I first spoke about this a couple weeks ago and started kind of put some things down on paper, one of the first things we did was look at is it's kind of a micro business within your business, right? It's going to have its own profit and loss statement. It's going to have its own kind of team that's running it. You're going to run it like its own little business in order to be able to achieve kind of the desired outcome. And if you recall, one of the first things we did is I had you put just a couple things that you were thinking of in your head down on paper. In this case, on a spreadsheet. And it was I think it was like ticket sales to the event and a few other things. And I think I can sell this, and I think we can get to these points, which is a fantastic first start. But do you remember what that next phase was? What was the next thing that I had you do and kind of going through that process on the spreadsheet?
Oh, yes, we beefed up my spreadsheet quite a bit. You helped me with that. And so I had, yes, very baseline, but you helped me set up like a profit and loss and kind of a like expenses and what's it going to take to make this project happen, along with what are the sources of revenue? What are the different sources and where can I find those? And you told me one thing that really stood out, which was take your number, find your number first. Like, what do you want to make out of this? And then reverse engineer it backwards. And that's something that was a light bulb moment for me because I've never done that before. Like looking at, okay, what do I want out of this? And then work backwards on how to make that happen.
Yeah, that's it's such a critical component. I'm glad that you got that piece out of it because it is, like we can do amazing events and we could, make $1 million off it and spend 999,999 and walk away with $1. It's like great, what did we accomplish? So, when we went through that process, I had you start to build the spreadsheet. And it was kind of fun to, walk through it step by step and create, a very, very, very basic kind of profit and loss statement, right? So if you're listening to this, you're watching this later on, you're like, well, I want to get started on this, and that sounds scary. It's really not. And we're going to kind of walk through maybe a few of the basic steps with this. But I had you line out probably the first thing was what do you want to make? What do you want to actually walk away with? Not, what do I want to make in top line revenue? What net income do I actually want to walk away with, from the event? And we figured out that number. You told me a number because now we need to back into it and say, one, is it realistic? Two, do we have all the numbers that are going to support it? And three, what is the activity that I need to then go do in order to make that a reality? And then once again asking the question, is that realistic? Right? Do we need to change some things? Is it something that's feasible long term? So we sat down, we started to kind of build some of this stuff out, and we started with, okay, here's the profit. Now let's list out all of the different expenses that we think are going to be a part of this particular event. You've got some that are, considered variable cost or cost of goods, like we only have these costs because we sold X, Y, and Z. And then you've got other things that are going to be overheads, right? So if you're thinking an event, it might be the actual event space. It could be, I've got a team that's got to do these specific job functions. It could be any number of things. I'm trying to remember what was exactly on the spreadsheet, but we listed it out, and it was like, what are the approximate expenses? What is the budget that the venue has given you on each of these things? And we can start to kind of approximate what are the actual costs of this particular like mini business or the event. So we took that, right? And then we were able to backtrack and say, all right, if I want this much profit, now if I, then look at my expenses, now I can actually back into how much revenue or sales do we actually need to get, dollar amount, in order to achieve that goal. And it gave you a clear number of, okay, this is my sales target. This is what I have to go achieve in order to get the bottom number.
Yes, and that's what really was setting me up for success because then I could look at when things happen, like additional costs came into play or changes on my pricing came up that I had to make. It was easier to just plug it in there and see where I could adjust elsewhere and like kind of remedy some of those issues that I was having and look at like what is that net income that I want to make and how can we find that if we can't find it here or there. And so that was a huge like a turning point for how I looked at this, especially coming from a year ago last year when I didn't take in any revenue on this very same event. And this year I see the opportunity, wow, we could actually use this as a revenue generating tool. And so that really helped me set up for that success.
Yeah, and what I really loved about kind of the process, because the first thing that we came together on is that first version of the spreadsheet was, here's the ticket sales that I think are possible, right? Here's what I want to be able to go sell, and you had three different tiers of ticket prices. You had like basic ticket prices, maybe like a VIP or kind of next step up, and like at the door type sales, right? Three different iterations or tiers of it. So because we knew that there was going to be different variants of revenue streams or ticket sales coming in that's going to generate that top number, we were actually able to then reverse engineer back to how many specifically of each ticket do I need to sell, and are those tickets priced appropriately? We've got the one, are they priced high enough based on the volume I think is reasonable to be able to
Mm-hmm.
achieve the sales number that I need, and two, is that price worth the value that the attendee is going to be receiving? So we kind of back into a few of these things so that you and your team could go back and say, okay, I need 10 of these sales, I need 30 of these sales, I need 40 of these sales, and you can actually start saying, breaking that down into, okay, there's a month between now and the event. We have 4 weeks, let's say. You can break it into how many is that per day, how many is that per week, like how many is that per person that's out there trying to sell tickets, or per lead channel eventually, right? Maybe not for the first iteration, but getting down to, okay, we're going to run Facebook ads, or we're going to do just, ticket sales on Eventbrite. How many do we think is going to come in from each one? Now,
Mm-hmm.
we're going through this iteration, this process, the first kind of real time that we're measuring this stuff together, which means there is a bit of guesswork, right? We don't actually know what's realistic when it comes to the ticket sales. You got maybe some data you can go back and take a look at, but this is a little bit different of an animal. So what's happening is we're creating the most realistic educated guess that we can, and we're going to measure the actual result against what we had planned. How close were we on each of the areas? Maybe we were spot on for traditional like at the door ticket sales, but we were way off on VIP sales. Um,
Hmm.
Now we can take a look at it and say, okay, well, that gives us now a baseline, and you've got this whole mechanism that we've created in what you're measuring that now you can replicate it, and you can say, all right, I'm going to do another event next month, next quarter, or next year, whatever it is, and realistically say, okay, I know for a fact that I'm able to get this many sales if I do this activity. Now I can just run that all the way forward, and I know that that's going to generate, this much revenue with this much expense. What can I specifically do differently to influence that? Whether that's increasing ticket prices, that's um, I know that we didn't, we missed on VIP ticket sales because we just weren't out there talking about them. Yeah, it could be
Hmm.
whatever it is, but it gives you the I now have a baseline that I can measure against because it's real results versus I think I can do this. Which is why I absolutely love the first reverse engineering so that we're not just making a guess and saying, well, I also hope I make money off this. But now we
Hmm.
can get back to saying, I know that it's realistic that I can achieve this because I've done it in the past and I have real data to support it.
100%. I love that tying it back into, following up after the event happens and really deep diving into like this is an educated guess and this is something we're striving for. But then yes, this is something I do want to continue within my business is having events quarterly. So this can really set us up for having a good backbone for those upcoming events and like maybe changing our strategy or amplifying another part of our strategy or maybe like switching altogether what we like how we're going about it. But it's really a great way to test the waters and also come up with a good solution and a good strategy moving forward.
Absolutely. And I absolutely love that, this event type of a thing really just becomes a microcosm of the overall business that you can then ultimately run, right? It's
Mhm.
the same thing, just amplified a bit further. So you could have different revenue streams, you could have, different marketing channels that you do, but the principles are the same. So if you can do it on this small scale where you get this very quick feedback loop of like, all right, I'm starting today and this thing is 4 or 6 weeks from now, I have a full cycle of something that happens, and now I can then replicate that in different ways. I can take that same learnings and I can apply it to the greater business, all the way down to like what team do I need to have to be able to support this? How do I have different contracts and vendors that I need to deal with, and being able to extrapolate that for the entire business gets kind of really fun. So it's a nice little way to kind of play, have a little playground on how to structure and operate the measurement within a business without having to like measure absolutely everything from the very beginning.
100%. And the biggest takeaway for me was having this structure in place, working with you, working with a coach to structure something in place and like have something tangible to look at takes a lot of the fear and anxiety away from trying something new in business. And that's something, a lot of us we're stepping into like uncharted waters and in business. And this just helps you have a good structure for at least an understanding of what could happen and what, setting yourself up for different things to happen and taking the fear and anxiety and being proactive. So I think that was my biggest takeaway, Tanner, was just that proactive nature of this exercise and also to create success within the event because it's going to be so much fun and that's something what business we got to remember to bring the fun back into it and know that it doesn't have to be scary, it can be strategic.
Oh, you hit on something that's so important, and maybe if you're listening to this, watching this later on, if you think this is a topic we need to dive into, please let us know. But that topic of fear and how having this information allows us to kind of reduce and mitigate some of the fear and the anxiety that we have, because it's like oftentimes when we feel fear or we have anxiety, it's because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what to do or what's going to happen. That's kind of where a lot of fear fits in, right?
Mhm.
That false expectations appearing real. I don't know what the outcome is going to be, or anxiety. I have so many choices. I don't know which one to make. And when we look at and say if we're measuring the right things within our business or within a project, we can see how do we make decisions that we have that have a really high confidence that it's going to have a specific outcome. You know, the outcome could be really positive, could be really negative, but the more we can correlate what's happening and have a high degree of confidence, the less we're going to have those fear and those anxiety feelings, because we're able to kind of mitigate, that risk, so to say. So love that topic. I absolutely love that you kind of take that away from this process as well, because it's a big reason why, large companies out there are able to measure and track so much information, ideally
Mhm.
the right information, but being able to take that and make decisions with confidence, which is really what mitigates those feelings.
Oh, definitely, Tanner. Well, that is so true, and I really appreciate this. And I vote that we do dive into the fear and like how to mitigate fear and how to move forward in business. If you wanna hear from us on that topic, drop it in the comments. What are some of your topics that you're fearful around, maybe within business, or you want answers to? We'd be happy to tackle that on another episode. So. Thank you, Tanner, for again shedding light on this topic and for helping me to create a structure and mitigate that fear and have a successful event.